Hello and welcome. Here's what's happening right now. Standoff in Los Angeles as President Trump sends in more soldiers.
I've deployed thousands of National Guard troops and hundreds of Marines.
The showdown in the streets and the battle in the courts.
Almost 50% more than the original estimate.
Plus, political turbulence over the ballooning costs of Canada's fighter jets.
It's tiring because you have to work fast.
And the marathon effort to fight the wildfires and the fatigue.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
I'm Todd Vanderheiden. Sandy is off today. 700 U.S. Marines are now deployed in Los Angeles, and that's on top of the thousands of National Guard troops. They're there on the orders of President Trump, who is being accused now of abusing his power. Trump says the soldiers are about keeping order after recent protests, riots over his controversial immigration policies. Our Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon is standing by, and Joy, this is turning into a political firestorm.
It really is, Todd. It's a fight that this president wants. Speaking to the troops at Fort Bragg, he is digging in, calling the anti-immigration protests an assault on peace and public order. He called it an insurrection, and he's spreading a false conspiracy that California's Democratic governor paid the protesters. The president also wants to jail those protesters who burn the American flag. Now that got a lot of cheers as Trump defended his use of active military against the wishes of California's elected officials. President Donald Trump has ordered additional soldiers to Los Angeles, more than 2,000 National Guard on the ground protecting federal buildings, another 700 active duty Marines arriving. It's an extraordinary move slammed by California's governor as a blatant use of power, filing an emergency motion to block Trump's illegal deployment of Marines and National Guard in L.A.
Again, just so Donald Trump can pound his chest and act like he is in control. He is creating chaos. He is sowing chaos.
In a city of immigrants for days now, there have been peaceful protests against the government rounding up undocumented migrants. National Guard out of LA! But overshadowing their message, nighttime looting and vandalism, fires being set in the streets, and clashes with police who fired stun grenades and tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. Local police say they've got it under control.
We fully support your right to peacefully protest. Those who choose to incite violence, engage in vandalism or graffiti, or attack officers will be arrested.
The mayor says this massive military show of force ordered by Trump is just stirring up people's anger.
And it makes me feel like our city is actually a test case for what happens when the federal government moves in and takes the authority away from the state.
As the unrest over immigration raids moves to other cities from Texas to New York, the president took credit for easing tensions in L.A., but still in a war of words with California's governor.
He's done a bad job, causing a lot of death and a lot of potential death. If we didn't send out the National Guard, Los Angeles would be burning right now.
Back in 2020, in his first term, the president wanted to put down protests using the Insurrection Act. The fear now is he might just do it. Todd?
CTV's Joy Malbon in Washington. Thank you, Joy. The new Liberal government is spending big on defense, but a report out today by Canada's government watchdog, the Auditor General, says the costs have ballooned for new F-35 fighter jets. Comes as recruitment numbers are up for the Canadian military, and with Prime Minister Mark Carney saying Canada needs to meet the challenges of a dangerous world. CTV's Mike Lecouture is in Ottawa with more, Mike, on the path forward now for the Canadian military.
Todd, the Auditor General says the cost of the fighter jets Canada is planning to buy has jumped by nearly $9 billion in just 2 years. Now, inflation and the pandemic explain some of the increase, but Karen Hogan says it comes down to poor management of the massive project.
Their original estimate of $19 billion was based on outdated information.
Even before it got off the ground, the cost of Canada's future fighter jet program was already soaring. In 2022, National Defence said the base price for the F-35s would be $19 billion. 24 months later, it climbed to $27.7 billion.
This figure did not include other essential elements needed for full operational capability, such as certain infrastructure upgrades and advanced weapons.
And you don't buy an airplane without weapons, and you don't buy an airplane without the garage to put it in.
Retired Major General David Fraser says at a time when defense issues are affecting our relationship with the U.S., Canada needs to make a decision as the Prime Minister orders a review of possible alternatives to the F-35.
If we don't buy this airplane, what airplane are we going to fly inside a NORAD or inside a Golden Dome that's going to be able to, interoperate with the Americans?
And the Defense Minister says those are factors Canada is weighing.
There are many countries that are participating in the F-35 development, engineering, industrial benefits, construction. We are all in this F-35 project right now.
But even if we have the jets, the Auditor General notes Canada doesn't have enough pilots or technicians for the planes.
And you have to know things about cyber and electronic warfare that technicians did not have to know about in the past. So this is where my concern would be.
A concern that the government says it takes seriously. Todd?
Mike Lecouture in Ottawa. Thanks, Mike. Well, the Auditor General also saying in her report today that federal workers failed to follow proper procedures when awarding contracts to the company behind the ArriveCan app used extensively, of course, during the COVID pandemic. And worse, that it's likely happening with other companies as well.
Not following the basic procurement rules that are meant to show transparency, good due diligence, and value for money.
Karen Hogan says one company known as GC Strategies was awarded more than 100 contracts in 9 years and was paid $65 million. She says in many cases the government provided little evidence that the work had actually been done. All right, so what does that mean? Let's get some context. Our chief political correspondent, Vashi Capello, is standing by in the Capitol. Let's bring her in. Vashi, good to see you. Let's start with the fighter jets. Way over budget. The takeaway here.
The takeaway is that part is not surprising. I think as long as we've been covering the existence or the possibility of us acquiring these fighter jets, the cost has increased. I think the takeaway for me from the AG's report perspective is more around not having enough pilots. So let's say we go through with this, we acquire all these new fighter jets, but we don't have people to fly them. That is a big deal. And the Auditor General points out it's been that way for a while and has not yet been rectified, despite the promises Mike points out to do so. The even bigger takeaway for me, however, is though there's this review going on about even acquiring F-35s or whether we're going to go ahead with it. I mean, so much money has been spent already. Plus, we've got the U.S. ambassador essentially telling us a few weeks ago on Power Play, if we don't do it, there's no more NORAD. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what I at least inferred from his comments. Like, I just don't know how you all of a sudden say this isn't going to happen. So my guess is they're going to have to proceed with it, but now they've got a lot more to focus on.
Right, because if you say no to the F-35s, then what, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly, very much the point. And in particular, when they are the most integral part of defending our continental airspace, how does the U.S. have them and not us? It just doesn't make sense.
All right, let's talk about the ArriveCan app that a lot of Canadians used during the COVID pandemic. And again, the red flags raised by the Auditor General and also the government's response. Vashi, what do you make of it?
Yeah, it's a great question. This one has, been a head scratcher for years now, because this isn't the first Auditor General's report into all of this. She has on multiple occasions found that basically there was nobody in the government, in the public service, making sure there was value for taxpayer money. It used to be $60,000 of taxpayer money, or $80,000, pardon me. It's now almost $60 million. And basically the government's response is, oh, we won't do contracts with that company anymore. Nothing about how they're going to make sure the rules are actually followed so that your money, my money, everyone's money who's watching actually sees value for it in contracting with the government.
Kind of a strange response, no?
Yeah, it's a bit of a shoulder shrug at this point, Todd, and that is a bit confusing. Maybe that response gets evolved a little bit moving forward, but it's a big deal. Like, getting value for taxpayer dollars is not nothing.
CTV's Vashi Capello, our chief political correspondent. Thanks, Vashi. Canada is formally sanctioning two far-right Israeli ministers over comments regarding the West Bank.
These two individuals promoted extremist settler violence, and it has to stop.
A joint statement with allies saying, quote, the two men have incited extremist violence, serious abuses of Palestinian rights, extremist rhetoric advocating the forced displacement of Palestinians and the creation of new Israeli settlements is appalling and dangerous. Anita Anand also saying Canada remains unwavering in its support of Israel. An historic drug bust in the Greater Toronto area to tell you about. Police seizing almost 500 kilograms of cocaine.
And these drugs came from south of the border and were destined right here into Peel, the Greater Toronto area.
Tables were piled high with drugs as police revealed the results of a year-long investigation. 9 men are accused of using commercial trucks to smuggle cocaine from the United States into Canada. It's the largest drug bust in the police service's history. Alberta is getting some international help to fight wildfires. A group of Australian fire crews are on their way to support the efforts in the province. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese posting on social media, quote, when our mates need help, Australia is there. As wildfire smoke drifts across the prairies, Edmonton is still under a special air quality statement. While in northeastern British Columbia, some structures have been destroyed in a wildfire currently raging near Kelly Lake. There's also no sign of rain in the forecast, and the situation is expected to get worse. There are hundreds of firefighters doing what they can right now to protect communities in our country, but the early start to the season across Western Canada means some are increasingly overwhelmed. CTV's Alex Carpa is in Winnipeg with the story of one firefighter working almost nonstop. Alex.
Todd, it's been a grueling and demanding time for firefighter Kyle Scribe. He has been helping fight the out-of-control wildfire near his community of Pimicikamak Cree Nation in northern Manitoba. This is much of what Kyle's work has looked like day in and day out for the last several weeks now. He and his team at the Cross Lake Band Fire Department have been tasked with putting out fires and identifying hot spots around the community. He says hot spots continue to flare up, which is causing more fires and creating a tougher environment to fight.
It's tiring because you have to work fast, and so the fire doesn't get away on you. Sometimes it does, right?
And Kyle says that's a lot of what he and his team have been dealing with, fires getting away from them, which is creating exhausting work.
Your mind says you want to do it, but after a couple of weeks, your body says you can't, right?
Hundreds of firefighters like Kyle continue to work around the clock so people can return to their homes. Around 21,000 people in Manitoba have been displaced from their communities, and as wildfires rage on, there could be more evacuations. Todd?
Alex Carpa in Winnipeg. Thanks, Alex. Fatigue is also setting in for firefighters in neighboring Saskatchewan, where wildfires have displaced thousands of people. Many still have no idea when they'll be able to go back home. But for some, today marks a bittersweet journey back to their scorched communities. CTV's Alison Bamford joins us now from Saskatoon.
Todd, earlier today, dozens piled into a bus outside this Saskatoon hotel to make the 6-hour drive back to Pelican Narrows, a trip that many have waited over 2 weeks to take. Right now, only Priority 3 evacuees, healthy adults and children older than 5, can return home to the northern community. Hundreds more are still waiting for the green light. They say they're fortunate knowing that when they can return, their homes will still be there.
There's over 400 homes and nothing was damaged. Just the trees surrounding it.
Doorbell camera footage outside Sarah Swan's home shows firefighters hauling hoses onto the roof to save her house. Cooler weather over the weekend helped firefighting efforts, but thousands of evacuees from across northern Saskatchewan are still displaced and waiting for assistance. The Saskatchewan Ombudsman says she's received countless complaints from evacuees who don't have a place to sleep and they can't access food or find diapers for their babies. The Ombudsman plans to conduct a full review of the wildfire evacuation response, but for now is calling on the Public Safety Agency to take immediate action. The Saskatchewan government says anyone who needs support can still contact the Public Safety Agency or the Red Cross. Todd?
Alison Bamford. Thanks, Alison. And we have created an interactive tracker to show you where wildfires are burning right now across the country and where smoke is affecting air quality. You can find all of that by heading to ctvnews.ca. Coming up, deciding not to downsize.
A lot of times it just the economics doesn't work.
Why some seniors are staying put and what that means for the housing market. Downsizing usually means moving to a smaller home and saying goodbye to stuff, but many seniors are now choosing to stay in their homes longer than they actually need to, homes that are larger than they need, and it impacts the real estate market overall. CTV's Adrian Gobriel has more for us on why some seniors are deciding to stay put. Adrian.
Todd, for some seniors across the country, downsizing from their traditional two-story family home to, say, a bungalow or even a two-bedroom condo doesn't always make a lot of financial sense. For once, smaller properties still cost a pretty penny. Here in Toronto, some also pay both a municipal and provincial land transfer tax. That's leading to experts to call on the federal government to extend the GST housing rebate to seniors.
Yes, hello.
Effie Pagelatopoulos' parents have spent the last 5 years coming to terms with their new reality.
My mom was diagnosed with dementia.
Jim and Anna Pagelatopoulos built this 4-story bedroom home in Toronto's East End in 1988. Now in their 80s, the stairs have become problematic. They had to pay for a lift to be installed. All the extra expenses have made purchasing a smaller property nearly out of reach.
I see it every day. They want to make a move. They many times need to make that move, but they're looking at all the costs involved.
It is great pleasure for me to be here, and I want to...
In March, the Carney government announced the elimination of the GST for first-time home buyers on properties under $1 million.
If a senior wants to downsize, move into a new condo, they are assessed GST. Here in Ontario, they're assessed PST.
This report, issued this month by the Missing Middle Initiative, is calling on Ottawa's GST rebate to be offered up to seniors who are moving to a smaller property, and for provincial governments to match the incentive as well.
And if that happened, that would shave up to 13% of the cost of new homes.
For Pagelatopoulos, who also works as a real estate agent, without a senior's tax break for her parents, given their current situation, a move simply wouldn't make sense.
And sometimes it doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't add up. Pay all those expenses to make a move now from a two-story to a bungalow. I mean, the gap is not that big. So where do they go?
The Canadian Centre for Economic Analysis estimates that here in Ontario alone, there's 4.4 million bedrooms sitting empty, in part because of seniors who won't, or in some cases, can't afford to downsize. Todd.
CTV's Adrian Gobriel. Thanks, Adrian. Well, summer is on the horizon, and according to forecasters at Environment Canada, it's about to be a scorching hot season. Higher than average temperatures should be the trend through most of the season for Canadians across the country, with only a few regions on BC's coast and in the Northwest Territories getting colder than average temperatures. Experts also say Canada is warming faster than other countries around the world, and that is because of climate change. CTV National News returns in just a moment. Stay with us. Defense lawyers for 5 former World Junior hockey players are now giving their final submissions in court. It's all related to an alleged incident in a London, Ontario hotel room back in 2018. CTV's Heather Wright is covering the trial in London. She was inside the courtroom today. Heather.
Well, Todd, 3 of the 5 defense attorneys have now wrapped their final submissions here in London. Carter Hart arrived at a London, Ontario courthouse this morning for the second day of his lawyer's closing submissions. Central to her argument are the issues of consent and credibility. She told the judge her client should be acquitted, that the sexual encounter between him and the complainant, known as EM, was consensual, while also calling into question her testimony. Megan Savard called EM's evidence, quote, deliberately slippery, accusing her of presenting opinions as facts and telling the judge she believed the complainant had an agenda. Daniel Brown, the lawyer representing Alex Formenton, began his closing arguments next. He told the judge the sexual encounter with Formenton was consensual and said the complainant decided to accuse the 5 players of sexual assault in order to cover up the decision she made and to go after a financial settlement with Hockey Canada. It's a lot easier to explain to her friends and family that people did bad things to her rather than take responsibility for the choices she made, he said. This case hinges on whether the night of group sex in room 209 at a London, Ontario hotel in June 2018 was consensual or not. The complainant testified she was coerced into performing sexual acts, was drunk and too terrified to leave the room.
The defense has tried to paint EM as a willing and active participant who has changed her story over the course of both the investigation and the trial. The Crown will have the opportunity to respond to the defense submissions during their final arguments later this week.
Today, the judge said she would deliver her verdicts on July 24th, giving her roughly 6 weeks to go through all of the evidence presented at this trial. All 5 players have pleaded not guilty. Todd.
CTV's Heather Wright in London. Thanks, Heather. After the break, a stroke of history, diving into an early sensational summer of back-to-back world records. That's next. It's shaping up to be the summer of Summer MacIntosh. The Canadian swimming superstar has broken 2 records in 3 days at the Canadian trial. CTV's John Vanavalley-Rao has more on the 18-year-old's smashing success. John.
Todd, Toronto's Summer MacIntosh once more making a splash, and again she's got the swimming community buzzing.
Here she comes.
Summer MacIntosh has broken records before, but this really was a moment to savor, ending a 200-meter medley faster than any woman on the planet.
It is! She destroys it again! The first woman ever under 2:06 in the 200-meter individual medley.
And afterwards, rather humble about it.
I mean, overall, really happy with that time and always just trying to keep pushing forward.
Under 30 seconds.
It wasn't the first time the crowd was on their feet at the Canadian swimming trials in Greater Victoria. On Saturday, MacIntosh smashing another world record in the 400-meter freestyle.
World record again!
I just feel like I'm witnessing history, which is pretty awesome.
MacIntosh, who's now 18, has been crushing it at the trials. Also breaking her own Canadian record in the 800-meter freestyle. What's been a joy to watch.
Some, groundbreaking performances. You can't say, any less than that deserves the headlines and the plaudits that she's getting.
This all comes after a spectacular Olympics for MacIntosh last summer, winning 3 gold medals and a silver. While swimming's long been popular in Canada, there's no question MacIntosh's success is giving the sport a boost.
She's become a household name, which means swimming is now in households. People are talking about swimming. Young children are coming along in the stands with posters of Summer.
When I see it, I feel motivated to break my own personal records. So I feel like that's really important to me that I get to see that.
As for those records in Victoria, MacIntosh says they'll give her a confidence boost heading into the World Championships in Singapore, which begin later next month. Todd.
All right, John Vanavalley-Rao. Thanks, John. And that's our newscast on this Tuesday. Thanks for sharing your time with us. I'm Todd Vanderheyden. Your local CTV News starts right now.